So if you were paying attention to Random Review last week, you probably know what I'm up to this week just by looking at today's review. Yep, I am planning on reviewing all of the Takara girls recently released in Japan, and we are starting off with the toy I reviewed exactly 1 week ago, this time in the form of Nightbird Shadow. Now, I will be treating these as completely different figures, so I will try to reference them in and of themselves and not draw too many comparisons to the original mold, though I still will make a few when it is relevant. For the most part, you're going to be able to watch this even if you hadn't seen my previous reviews. However, if you want a little bit of reference to how they were originally, they are out there, they are in the playlist, which is probably linked somewhere. So, yes, the RC mold is now Nightbird Shadow, which means it gets the black and silver color scheme the character was known for in G1. Of course, the Enter the Nightbird episode where she debuted, and thusly vanished into obscurity until people decided they needed something to be a female Decepticon. So, naturally, the one evil female Decepticon anything they had in the show ended up getting actual female Decepticon. I'm rambling. It's a cool looking car. The black and the silver are, of course, a really nice color scheme. It's accented by a little bit of yellow here for a turn signal, translucent yellow for the windshield, and purple seats. So just a little bit of purple because that is one of Nightbird's colors. And a little bit of yellow here on the taillights as well. You can see the black going all the way to the back and a ton of that silver. All of this silver, by the way, is paint. It is not molded in. It's actually like a flat gray plastic when you look at it in the unpainted form. So all of this going through here is silver. It's very reflective and metallic. It's a very nice shade, looking quite good. Now, the one pressing thing about the figure, of course, is since it is based on the RC mold, yes, it is RC's vehicle, and that's probably the hardest thing to get past when it comes to this figure because the vehicle mode is just so RC. It is so unique to her that it's really hard to pass it off as a different character. Yes, it's Nightbird's colors. It gives a very different look because it's going for a very different deco pattern in this mode. But it's the shape, it's the silhouette and profile of the vehicle. It's just so uniquely RC. It's really hard to see it as anyone else. As it stands, the only part remolded is this section in the front, which is molded more for the robot mode than the vehicle, and thus it really doesn't fit in. The silver does mask it really well, but the longer you look at it, the more you realize it's really not the front of a car in any way, shape, or form. Maybe a little bit of a grille there at the very bottom, but yeah, it's not really changing the look of the car in any way, shape, or form, so it's unfortunately... yeah, that's the one thing you really have to get through when it comes to this vehicle mode. There's just no way of hiding that that's supposed to be RC. Now, accessory-wise, we do still have the swords, which they do still peg in. As you can tell, they are now in translucent yellow, and the supports are the same as RC. You have 2 here in the back for the top, 2 here in the sides for anything you want to slice going down the road. However, along with these swords, you now have size, which is a really unique weapon for a Transformer. Like, I got to thinking about it, and I really genuinely can't think of any other Transformer that came with psi weapons. It's quite unique and quite cool now that I think of it. So yeah, now she's just completely decked out in spikes. And now it kind of doesn't look like RC. We have all kinds of things and pointy bits everywhere in this translucent yellow. So it looks a little bit weird. It's a little bit Mad Max, but, you know, whatever. We're going to see those a little bit more once we get to robot mode. And just in case, you can mount all the guns here as well. They are stored on the underside, just like they are on RC, with the rifle going at weird diagonal, but there it is. And the gun, the smaller one, currently as part of her transformation, which is what her hands are clipped into. I was told that there are supposed to be some pegs or nubs of some kind that could hold her hands while she's actually holding the gun in vehicle mode, just in case you still need a place to mount them. But try as I might, I can't really find that. And the only nubs I found were like these, and they don't fit her hands. So I'm not quite sure what I was pointed at, but I couldn't really come across it. To my knowledge, this is the only really secure way of keeping the hands held. Yeah, I'm sorry, like I'm not seeing it. Oh well, might be my own fault. It's not like I'm infallible. Anyone watching these reviews knows I am far from infallible. So, yeah, let's get this thing into the robot mode and actually see what's so different about this toy. We undo the rear section and fold the legs down. The legs will double hinge from what they are now to a much more slender, yet still very hippie shape. Not that she's shaped like an actual hippie, but she's just very wide-hipped. The feet will fold down like so. Let's get the arms outward, line them up. The front section, first we will fold up the belly, then unclip front. Now all of this, we're going to fold that rear section down in, get this hinge working to get everything down. These loops are going to clip in around the shoulders just to hold everything together like so. Midsection goes down and pegs in like such, and then close off the neck. So make sure it's all down, tight, and secure, and everything's in its proper place. And with that, we have a finished robot mode for Nightbird Shadow. And here, while there's a little bit of RC left, now we are definitely getting into a different profile. The shape is similar, but enough was changed of RC's typical robot mode to actually successfully pull off a different character, and it does look quite a bit like Nightbird from the original cartoon. This is where they really started doing a good job at redoing the identity of this toy. Of course, the main feature is the brand new head molding. Very ninja-like, very Nightbird-like, with that very long chin section, which I suppose is supposed to be the loose section of a ninja's hood, as well as the faceplate, and the very mean expression. You can actually see some ridges in the forehead where she's looking fairly angry. It's a very good job. It's a very nice molding. And I think it works well with the toy. It's still in the same kind of style, and it does match up with the actual design of the toy, which I will actually keep the close in for just a little bit longer. So you can see now the chest really does work. While it really didn't look appropriate in the vehicle mode, now it takes away some of that RC profile and really gets the Nightbird across better. The belly with her signature design definitely helps as well. Like a purple championship belt. You know? So that works all... That works all nice and good for me. I do like the deco here. Again, there's a lot of silver paint covering a lot of her form. It's in the forearms, it's in the hands, thighs, shins, and very little of that bare gray plastic, which is so far only in the upper arms, some connection points in the legs, and that's really it. She shines all over. She is metallic in many, many places, and it really, really works. She does carry the inherent flaws of the RC mold, namely, she is quite the shell former. Again, in the RC version, this is something of a problem, but at the same time, it's pretty much exactly what I would expect, because it's hard to get that robot to come out of that car otherwise, and I would say the same of Nightbird, though with Nightbird, I actually think it's more forgivable because she didn't have a vehicle mode. So what are you going to do? Now you really don't have any way of structuring a vehicle around her. So, yeah, it works out for what it is. And I think it's a good use of the mold. It's a clever use to get Nightbird out of RC, simply because form-wise, they do have the same slender female form, and RC's transformation does kind of lend itself to just being a straight-up robot, keeping all the vehicle parts on its back, which helps get Nightbird across a lot with her G1 identity. For articulation, we do have a ball-jointed head with full range of motion. Of course, you're not going to get a whole lot of downward motion because of that big old chin thing. Fully ball-jointed shoulders. Rotation at the bicep. You have an elbow with really good range and a faux detent. So it actually has a, well, not faux, it actually does have little detents in the plastic to give a little bit of a faux ratcheted effect and secure the poses a little bit better. No waist articulation. Hips have some good range, but the same problem with RC. The way the hips come together means they are a little bit weird in how they work. You can work the double hinge to get a wider hip. However, it does create a little bit of an awkward angle. So, unfortunately, the outward hip movement is a little bit limited. Rotation, just above the knee. The knee itself, great amount of bending to it. And you have ankles, which aren't tilted, but they are naturally slanted inward for a more natural stance. And they tilt forward and backward quite well. So, quite the articulated figure. Quite good at posing, as you'd expect a ninja to be. Though I do wish the hips were just a little bit better, just so she can be just a little bit more ninja. Also, I will say, for something with a big backpack, the balance is actually pretty decent. Though you might have to have her hips, her legs going a little bit backward, just so they're farther under her center of gravity. Now comes the fun part. All the accessories. Now, see, we still have access to a few things from the actual vehicle mode. The side pieces are now here, which can holster her guns quite well. And we'll go ahead and do that. Boom, boom. We have these up here, which I suppose are supposed to hold her swords like an actual like a sheath thing. But unfortunately, like, I never got these sockets to work. Actually, I don't think I got them to work on RC either. They're there, they're the right size, but they're not quite fitting. But, I don't know, I like her, I kind of like her with using the peg holes on the side of the arm for the arm blades a little bit better anyway. The big thing are these sides, which I'll take a closer look at. They have kind of a crystalline effect with them. You can see multiple layers of stabby bits just kind of molded in. They look quite cool, and there's something very special about them. Now, I will tell you, Nightbird uses the same version of the RC mold that I had in the original review, meaning there is a small bridge of plastic on the bottom side of her hand, which gives her the exact same problem that RC had. Though I suppose, when you're trained in ninjutsu your whole life, you wouldn't know how to operate a gun properly either. Or maybe you do. I've seen gun kata. Either way, she cannot hold either of her old weapons properly again. She just kind of holds them by the base of the handle. Which brings me to the size, which actually have a somewhat thinner handle. And when I actually try to install these, they go all the way in and look completely natural in her hand. And now this is cool because, of course, this is G1 Acura. She did have size in G1. She had a ton of weapons in the G1 cartoon, barely any of which are replicated here. I wanted some shurikens. But it is nice to see that they actually took the time to actually create the mold so that her hands can fit them. Though that does make me wonder why they didn't just use the open hand version of the toy so all of her weapons could fit the hands. Or as long as they were retooling things, why didn't they retool the handles of her guns and swords so that they could do the same thing too? So I think there's some missed opportunity here. They're clearly shown some motivation to improve the situation, but not enough to go all the way, which is a little bit disappointing. Also, on the disappointing end, I will tell you, the back of her head leads to worry. The new head is molded in clear plastic. This is worrisome. Though I will tell you, it's not the most solid of ball joints, and not that it's loose. It holds position obviously, but it doesn't take much It doesn't take much finger force to actually rotate or move the head, so I'm not terribly worried about this ball socket. It is fairly thick plastic, so I'm not too worried about this one. I think this one's going to hold up. And also, I will tell you, it does create a really nice light piping effect. It really does not take much to get her eyes to flare up. That clear plastic lets in so much light, and I'll tell you, I'm not sure if it's like 2 levels of translucent plastic. It looks like it might be, hard to tell with the head assembled, or if it's painted on that side the way that Universe Inferno did. But it lets in a ton of light and lets her eyes flare really bright yellow with just a little bit of light behind them. That's really good light piping work. So that really works out well for me. So that, in a nutshell, my friends, is Nightbird Shadow. A fairly good redo of the RC mold. While it's hard to make the vehicle look like anyone else, the robot does a great job of casting Nightbird as a completely new character. And I'm really happy that not only did she get her new size, but she also gets to keep all of RC's other weapons, including the guns, which are wholly inappropriate for a ninja. However, it does give her a ton of accessories and a lot more bang for your buck as a result, which is important when it comes to these import figures. Now, that is 1 down, 2 to go, and take a wild guess what order I'm doing them in.